Good evening and a very warm welcome to our event tonight, the event called Innovate for Tomorrow, Startup, Sustainability and Societal Impact. And it's a great occasion to have again the great partnership with Bosch and to already have it for the third time, which I think constitutes now a real tradition. And let's continue this tradition and make more out of this. It is not only the theme of our evening to have Innovate for Tomorrow, but you could also call it a call for action. This is really what is needed. We, as you can see here, we are here in a very historic place. We are here in the former building of the State Council, the Supreme Governing Council of the GDR. And you can see on the walls, for those of you who haven't been here, the visions and maybe the perceived future of what GDR looked like. Now it's a completely different place today. Now it brings together students, faculty members, staff from all over the world. Last year we had 100 different nations among our students. We have 20 different nations among our professors. We are deeply committed to the principle of a social market economy, and in particular thinking of changes that happen everywhere, in education, in innovation, in leadership, in vision. So everything that also is important to have a sustainable future. What we would like to basically do, and this is hopefully the inspiration we get from this place, is to continue the legacy of transformation and unravel the intricate details of our modern age. We do this in quite a number of initiatives here at ESMT. This is something that really constitutes a very important element of our teaching, of our research, and you could also say of the platform that we create. And this is a prime example of the platform that we have. But also there are institutes such as, for example, our Institute for Deep Tech Innovation, or brief DEEP, which helps bridge the gap between groundbreaking research and scalable business solutions. So in that sense, we would like to support young companies in supporting these scalable business solutions. And therefore, questions of deep tech, of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and in particular, green financing are filled with life. They are not just buzzwords, but they are very important for what is going to come. I'm extremely delighted, and I have to say I'm really excited about the fact that we have a highly distinguished panel, which will be introduced later on by our esteemed moderator. It's also that we will have again, and this has become the great tradition of this event, we have the great interaction with insights that students create. And therefore, it will allow, first, for a great discussion across disciplines, and second, it will also allow for a great discussion across generations. When I prepared actually for this and prepared for my speech, I looked for Robert Bosch. Because Robert Bosch, in my view, is a role model of what we have in mind here today. There's a famous site by Robert Bosch, and this is, and let me just quote, "Advances in the development of technology, in the fullest sense of the word, serve to provide the greatest service to humanity." And that's really what I think could be a role model for the evening. It could be even a role model for what we do here at ESMT, that whatever we see as development of technology not only helps business, but in the sense really helps society, helps all of us. So in that sense, helping to shape industries globally, but also helping to provide solutions to the most pressing needs of our days. And sustainability and the concerns of sustainability are certainly one of the, maybe the most pressing issue we have today. So therefore, what I would like to hope for is out of this discussion, out of our meeting, our event here today, is not just new insights. That by itself is already very important, but rather to see that we see the potential for change coming out of the discussion, so that we get new insights that can be brought into powerful action. That we can create connections, that we can create new inspiration that really help us to drive a sustainable and an equitable future. So therefore, I look very much forward to lots of engaging discussions, lots of insights, new innovative ideas. And I'd like to thank our panelists already in advance, but I'd also like to thank all of you for being here to really make it a very engaging evening. It will be a great evening, I'm sure, because I know how great the evenings have been that we've seen in our previous editions. With this, I'm very happy, very delighted to pass the stage to Professor Christof Ehrhart, the Executive Vice President of Corporate Communications and Governmental Affairs at Robert Bosch. And let me add that Professor Ehrhart and myself have been thinking along the time again and again about how to best structure this event, and I'm very grateful for the great cooperation we have with Bosch. I'm very personally also very thankful for our personal exchange on this. And with this, again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and please give a very warm applause to Professor Ehrhart. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Rocholl, for being such a great partner in crime since years now in setting up those, as we call them, stakeholder dialogues. And I'm really thrilled. I mean, the crowd is getting bigger every year, and I'm sure we're going to have an interesting evening. So also a warm welcome to all of you from my side on behalf of Robert Bosch GmbH. It is a great pleasure to be back here at ESMT tonight. I mean, you spoke about the disruptive past of this place here, so it's always very much inspiring, and there's a lot of energy in the room when we talk about business and how business relates to society nowadays. We want to engage today in a very special stakeholder dialogue. This should be about the important question how startups can be at the forefront of sustainable innovation and how important knowledge is as a resource for aspiring entrepreneurs. Last time, some of you might have been part of that as well. We talked about the role of companies and innovations as regards to the S in ESG. In other words, the social and societal impact of companies with and beyond their business. But today we would like to focus our perspective and look at the role of startups, especially in aiming for sustainability and the social impact. Sustainability and corporate responsibility are key challenges and opportunities at the same time when it comes to shaping a future worth living for all of us. Startups have the unique opportunity to act as catalysts for sustainable change. They are often the first to develop innovative solutions that not only bring technological breakthroughs to customers, but also have a profound positive impact on our society and our planet, all of our lives. But it's not startups only that are crucial for that change. Large companies, such as Robert Bosch, also play a key role in the implementation of sustainable economy and society. As established players, they might have the resources, expertise, and also scaling capabilities necessary to promote sustainable innovation on a large scale. Not only can they drive technological solutions through their global reach and infrastructure, they can also pave the way to broader societal impact through partnerships and investments. Collaborations between startups and large corporations that combine the different strengths can be particularly effective catalysts for systemic change. So today's discussion should provide us, hopefully, with some valuable insights into how companies of all sizes, startups and established businesses, can be at the forefront of sustainable innovation and provide essential momentum for the next generation of entrepreneurs, many of those, I'm sure, here in the room. This is not just about technological advances, but also about how we can create the right framework conditions that enable companies to grow and make a measurable impact. Our aim, and that applies for all of the stakeholder dialogues we were able to organize with the great support of ESMT, is to promote dialogue between stakeholders, between science, business, politics, between the generations, and to jointly investigate how we can further expand the supporting ecosystems for sustainable business. Companies need an environment that enables both innovation and scalability of sustainable business models. This is only possible if we unite as a society to create the right political, financial, and social framework conditions. Another focus must be on sustainable finance. But it's not just the substantive discussion that is crucial. The exchange, the networking, and also the collaboration makes this day, I'm sure, as special as the other events we had before. We have the unique opportunity to foster connections between companies, investors, and policymakers, and perhaps even lay the foundations for future collaborations that can bring about even greater change. I'm aware that companies cannot change the world on their own. It requires collaboration and dialogue. However, the innovative power of companies combined with the support of investors, the right political support, and a society that wants change, and I'm sure we all want change, can be the key to tackling pressing global challenges. I personally look very much forward to lively discussions and to working with you to find new ways to make steps into a sustainable future. Let's recognize the potential of all companies and all stakeholders in working together for a fairer and more sustainable world. And with this, I hand over to our guide through tonight, experienced as ever, Monica Jones. Monica, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Ehrhart and Professor Rocholl as well. Thank you for having me back here at the European School of Management and Technology. It's always good to be here because you always have such great panelists, as you pointed out, but also such really interesting topics. And then, of course, the interaction with everybody here in the room, the students in particular, is also always very exciting. Professor Rocholl mentioned the disruptive past of the ESMT. That reminds me that, of course, we live in very disruptive times, full of disruptive energy right now, from geopolitical power shifts to the rapid advance of artificial intelligence, which certainly there are lots of opportunities, but maybe also some pitfalls along the way. So it's very interesting to look at it from various perspectives, and the topic Innovate for Tomorrow, talking about startups, talking about sustainability and the societal impact is very timely. Now, before I call our fantastic panelists onto the stage, just this remark: please make sure that your mobile phones are set on mute, but also make sure to keep them ready to use, because we use Slido for you to interact with us up here. For one, we want to do a polling question with you, and then of course you can use Slido to ask your questions, submit your questions to the panelists. That is particularly interesting for everyone who is joining us online. At this point, a very warm welcome to everyone who is there joining us online. When you look at the screen, you should see on the right-hand side of the screen already Slido with either polling or Q&A. If you don't see that, that's because you're in full screen, then you just have to minimize it, and there you are. So make sure that you can handle it, because that's your only way to interact with us here. For you here in the room, of course, for the Q&A, all you need to do is raise your hand. You will get a microphone, and you can interact this way. Except for the polling, for that you do need your mobile device, and we'll do that very soon. So make sure that you have the QR code, which we should see on the screen, hopefully, so that you can get into Slido. And if you can't get the QR code sorted, then, so I'm told, you can also go online to slido.com, and then you need a password, and that password is Innovate for Tomorrow. No dot, no breaks, just in one word, and it doesn't matter if it's capital letters or small letters. So, nope, I don't see any QR code. I'm just looking into the back of the room. Our technicians, here we are. Okay, so I should see, yes, exactly, that's the picture I wanted to see. Lots of phones aimed at me. No, aimed, of course, at the QR code. And again, if for some reason that doesn't work, you go in online, and then password is Innovate for Tomorrow. So, and while you fiddle with that, let me introduce you to our panelists. And I'm starting with basically the partner in crime, as we just heard from Professor Ehrhart, just the other way around, namely Dr. Stefan Hartung, the CEO of Bosch. If you would care to come to the stage, Mr. Hartung. Then, and I'm doing it in a very clever way. I do it in the way you're seated, so you don't even have to read the signs. It's all taken care of. I would also like to call to the stage Thanh Nguyen, and sort of, almost, the co-founder of Batene, which is a fantastic startup. Then I would like to welcome Dr. Sandra Detzer, member of the German Parliament for the Green Party, as we know, also member of the Economic Committee.
I'm not going to change anyone.
We also say hello to Dr. Bettina Orlopp, Chair and CFO of Commerzbank.
CEO.
CF instead of there. Then there's a typo.
She's promoted.
It's a typo. A typo. We didn't hear that. We didn't say that. Last but not least, Professor Johan Rockström, Director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. And with that, we're complete. And if you're good to go with Slido, I would like, for a change, start with all of you. So there's a Slido question. You don't need your phones. We see the results here on the screen. Of course, you can share with me what your answer would have been. So if we open it up, you should see a question, polling question, which is, what is the most important factor in fostering a sustainable startup ecosystem? And you have 4 possible answers to choose from. Supportive legislation and policies, access to public and private funding, development of eco-friendly jobs and skills, or partnerships between startups, corporations, and NGOs. And yes, you're right, all 4 answers are correct, but you can only choose one. And that's a hard one. So, politics at the moment, regulators. It's all your fault. Supportive legislation and policy seems to be right ahead of financing. Interesting. So eco-friendly jobs and skills. Okay. Well, that's something we save that, because I will ask you at the end of our discussion again, and we see if something has maybe changed, maybe not.
All right.
So, your supportive legislation and policies. We'll talk about all of those aspects to the important factors of fostering a sustainable startup ecosystem. But first, let me ask you, Dr. Hartung, about the role of technology in scaling sustainable solutions, and in particular, the question, how does a traditional and established company, corporation like Bosch, how does that actually go together with startup? Are these 2 parallel worlds? How do you touch each other?
Yeah, actually you would say so, because it's completely different art, right? It's like you start something from zero, or you continue something which is very big. So you would normally say it doesn't fit, right? But that's actually a disaster, because if it doesn't fit, then you have a major problem, because there's a clear rule that you cannot do all innovation yourself. You can be as big as you want. Yeah. It's impossible. Yeah, and once you learn that, you recognize you need startups. So how do you do that? And that's not problematic. You can try to do your own startups, which is a very interesting idea. Sometimes it works, but I tell you it rarely works, because you have then to find the people in your company who want to do startups, and that's not necessarily exactly the people you have, right? Money you normally have enough, that's not the big issue, but the problem is, do you have really the people, the mindset, and so. Okay, then you can say, let's buy a startup, but if you bought the startup, it's a big risk that the startup is not anymore a startup after a while, yeah, because you kind of inhale it. The third is you just buy a share in a startup, yeah, so you invest in a startup. Yeah. That's kind of a good idea, but then you have to be quite, you have to be sincere, stay as an investor, and not, and to be honest, for me also very important is you just work with a startup. Because many startups need also customers, right? Yeah, exactly. And large companies are normally, they can be clumsy customers because they're complicated, but the good thing on large companies is they can be big customers. And that's something in the later stage of a startup is actually pretty good. So I would say that's what we actually do. We do the seed financing for startups, right? We do that. But we also do open collaboration with startups, so that's what we call Open Bosch. And we also have a small unit that tries to do own startups. So that's the ways you can try.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a preference? Is there anything where you say from experience that's the best way to go?
Meanwhile, I like very much the collaboration with startups. Mm-hmm. So with them, that we are customers, and we sometimes invest also with those, right? But that's actually very cool, because then you can, first of all, have multiple startups to do this in parallel, right, with multiple teams. The commitment is very high, because normally these startups bring something you don't have. Mm-hmm. and both sides learn. Yeah, so and you, by the way, have big impact on the startup on valuation, because as bigger the scaling becomes, the more valuation the startup gets. So that's positive. And normally we get something we don't have, and normally we get something we don't get from anybody else. Yeah, and that's, so I like very much this open Bosch. But I'm also a big fan of my venture capital funds, which do investments. Yeah, because that's a different type of engagement, right? Seed investments. And that's interesting. We are only seed investors, second stage investing. We don't have enough cash. Yeah.
Okay. That's also something to remember. Thanh, you just mentioned something about hold your thought. That, of course, was the variation of the investment,
Yes.
the investment part. But I mean, your startup. Tell us a little bit, but just that we know. We all know Bosch,
Okay.
but Batene.
Okay.
What do we need to know about Batene?
Well, first of all, hi, everyone. Well, first of all, we're a spin-off of the Max Planck Society, so our technology is based on a very, very pretty good science. But I think what you should know about Batene is we are a deep tech battery technology startup. So we'd like to bring our product to the battery markets, which is not easy, of course. But to say quite clear, we are not making batteries. We're actually focusing on one component of the battery, which is the current collector. It's, you could say it's like a circular system in your body, like every battery needs that. By the way, I'm a CFO, so I'm not going to pretend I'm the CTO. And we were founded in 2022 and operational since March 22. We've got some nice seed money, actually from investors from abroad in New York and in Scandinavian. And we are seated in close to Stuttgart, actually close to Bosch as well. And we have a team of roughly about 18, 19 heads right now, and we are going on a Series A round right now. And that's why I said, like, keep that thought. But actually, actually, the point for me is also, it's not always about the money. I think it's you have. On the one side, you have startups. I think startups, I don't need to tell you much about startup. There's this image of a startup. It's all very agile, and people want to change things and question the standards, make something big. I think that's a very, very precious culture. And if you team up with great partners, for example, with a big company like Bosch, I think it's about collaboration. It's about learning and supporting each other for the bigger goal. So I'm sorry, I had to stop introducing Batene. I had to make that point.
That was all very well. That's what we're here for. Just next to you, because I know that Dr. Detzer is in her capacity also over the years, I sort of followed it also very, following up startups, supporting startups, visiting startups. But on a broader scale, I mean, what role do startups and social entrepreneurship also, which is very often sort of closely associated with startups, startup culture, what role does it play in everyday politics, everyday decision making? Maybe not the best period in time to talk about that, but just, is it something that also is being talked about, but it's not really a priority? I mean, how would you view that?
I would love to say that startups are in the middle of the discussion that we have in everyday politics. And obviously, especially these times, it's not really the case. But, and the but is important, I think they played a huge role, especially when we talked about the future of competitiveness, when we talked about the kind of reinventing Germany and Europe as an innovative place over the past years. And within this economic debate, the startups were the kind of, there were crystallization, you can say, of hopes that we can be as innovative as China, for example, or the US, that we can especially also bring together the big champions that we have, and that we are so proud, especially in Germany, of bringing together with people that really want to try something new. Because there was a very interesting phrase that you said when you introduced the discussion. It's like, everyone wants change or something like that. It was great to hear as a politician, because right now, when I'm in the election campaign, sometimes you gain the impression that only a few people want change. And when you look at the startup community, it's really the case that everyone's trying to find something new. And I think we really should give like these people more broader capacities, financing stuff. So that's why we had this startup strategy set up, I think 2 or 3 years ago. Within the framework of the ministry, and I think the strategy worked pretty well. We did about 80% of all the measures and instruments are implemented. And for example, we have this WIN strategy to get more finance within this startup landscape. And we know, obviously, that Germany and Europe is not good enough in financing the stuff. I mean, Bosch can't be everywhere. So maybe I'm sure that we have to work more on venture capital, deepening the market union within the European Union to really improve the financing for startups. So after all, I think in Germany the value of startups is appreciated, is seen. But still, we are very, at the beginning, really making their lives easier and accelerating all that the good ideas really become products and that I really can earn money with it, because I don't think that Germany is so bad when it comes to research and doing all the foundations, but there is kind of gap between from research to products. And we should be better to get the products and play as Europeans play a role in international markets.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, the European Commission, certainly since the Draghi paper, is having that one as one of the priorities. But we also know that Europe isn't necessarily the fastest when it comes to action and implementation of those ideas. But you mentioned financing quite a lot, and that obviously takes me straight to Dr. Orlopp, the CEO of Commerzbank, just to make sure that there was no misunderstanding before. And 2 questions for you straight away. For one, what role do startups play for Commerzbank in your portfolio? Well, we just heard from Dr. Detzer also how much appreciation there is towards startups. How does this actually show in terms of regulation and allowing you to support and finance startups?
Lots of questions. So first of all, you were not too wrong. So I'm still also the CFO. So I'm CEO and CFO. I have the fun in the moment of a double function that will unfortunately change by 1st of February. But so in the moment, everything is right. So I can talk in double function. So what do we do with startups? They're very important for the financial services industry. From, I would say, 3 aspects. Number 1 is we connect startups with our clients, because many of our clients have the desire also to work closely together with startups, specifically actually on the sustainability side. So we have the Impact Festival, which is organized by Neosphere, to make sure that really our corporate clients, Mittelstand specifically, Bosch can do it on their own, but the Mittelstand, that they have a possibility to connect with other startups to see what solutions they can use. So very important, this connection point. The second point is that we collaborate, that we use as a bank startups in certain areas. Whoever is client from Commerzbank and uses the mobile function and you scan your invoice to make a transfer, the technology behind that is from a startup. If you want to change and come to Commerzbank, the account change service is made by a startup. So we use it specifically on the IT software application side. We have a lot of collaboration with startups. And then last but not least, we also finance and we invest in startups. Financing startups is a difficult one if you think from a perspective of a CRO. So you have to be in a certain point advanced to really get financing. So we use, when it comes to early stage, we really use the investment vehicles which we have, which is again Neosphere for really early stage, and then we have Commerzventures, which is investing in already more advanced startups. Specifically on fintech, but it also is also extended to sustainability startups. We have Climate X and other things, other startups we invest in. And we talk about 500 million, 500 million, which we have in our funds already. So it's not small money, it's a lot what we invest, and we are also part of the WIN initiative you just referred to, because we think that is the biggest problem in the moment, that we do not have enough financing power. Probably for the startups in early stage, yes, but whenever it comes to the next stage where you really have already a product, you have clients, but you do not have yet achieved the break even, and you need lots of money because you are in the technology side. This is where we need to help, where we need to have the financing power. This is why we have WIN. WIN is not only about us investing, but it's also that we set up funds which we then distribute among our private wealth management clients, institutional clients, so that we really create a market for these type of investments. And that's what we do. We think it's very important, and we need to do much more, because if you look on the access of money you see in the US, it's such a difference to Germany. And if you look how many Germans, expats, sit in the US, it's a drama. So we could have them here in Berlin or in Frankfurt or in Hamburg or Munich, but we lose many of them early stage because they do not get access here. They rather go to the UK or to the US. And it's a pity, because then they come back at a certain point in time, specifically when they are in B2C, because then Germany, again, is a great market because it's the biggest economy in Europe, and it's great to test something here. It's much more convenient than going into smaller countries. And that leads me to your second question, legislative regulatory requirements, because that is also the true nightmare for many of us, but we are huge companies, we can cope with it. We have huge compliance departments, we have huge IT departments which can deal with all the requirements we get. But unfortunately, a Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz, I can pronounce it, and hopefully it will now be adjusted at least, if not even decided against it by the next government. It's something which also is a burden for these smaller companies or even startups. And you're like 20 people, 25 people, and then you have to deal with all these things. Because at the very end, nobody cares whether you have 30 people or 2,000 or 20,000 people, you need to comply. And that is sometimes a nightmare. We also try to help on that, but there are limits. Yeah. And it also creates the problem that sometimes we can't even cooperate with startups, because now when I talk about a bank, we get the requirements from the regulator to make sure that everything works in the right way. And if something happens on the startup level with respect to data security, cyber, whatever, they come back to us and blame us for that. This is also a big problem we currently have.
So it was meant well, but it actually hampers the kind of support that those startups need. Yeah. Professor Rockström, two for you as well. For one, startups and science There's a survey, a recent survey, I think it's Ernst Young or EY, that found that there was an increase in startup activity over the last year, in particular, always in the surrounding of universities. So that I find interesting. I would like to have your thoughts on that. And also, when we saw that polling question there, green skills and this kind of ecosystem was not even an afterthought. What do you say about that?
Well, I think on the polling here, I think it's simply, if you may excuse, that I think we're taking it for granted. That, of course, the immediate challenges are regulatory, they're financial, but fundamentally, we have so much evidence that the real successful, not only startup, but all forms of innovation and business thrives in ecosystems where you have not only universities, but when you have excellent universities. It's not a coincidence that what's happening in Boston around MIT and in Harvard and what's happening in Silicon Valley and the Californian regions. But of course, when you count up Munich, Frankfurt, Hamburg, Berlin area, Cambridge, Oxford, I mean, these are not coincidences. Stuttgart, of course. These are not coincidences at all. It simply thrives in regions where you have young people, young talent, really courageous and good academic institutions that then spin off new ideas. So I think that is actually quite clear. But what I would like to take a bit of an academic stance here to say that that said, politically, one should not do the mistake to then lean and to put too much pressure on academic institutions to make them the spin-off generating institutions. I think one should do, just like Germany does with the Max Planck Society, for example, to leave them with their scientific integrity and be measured on scientific excellence, and then that you collaborate and hold hands with other actors to then take this to market. And I think you should be really proud here in Germany of having the university system with independent academic universities, but then also having the Helmholtz and the Max Planck and the Fraunhofer and the Leibniz institutions that are measured on scientific excellence and keep it that way. Don't push that unique feature too far to also being part of transfer or the different often political terms that are used in this sense. Because I think that is often a mistake done in many regions in the world when you try to get universities to basically be part of the application side, or at least moving that too far. But then also, Monica, to close on this part of the ecosystems, let me also say that we are at a point now where the transition to sustainability must accelerate. We know this. We have to go to scale. We have to have speed. And we're lagging behind. And that is where I think that the startup ecosystems, having societies that can truly generate and also accelerate innovation through startups, can not only inspire, but put constructive pressure on the political system, on the economic system, but on citizens in general, of the direction of travel. I think you could think of startups as kind of speedboats around cargo ships of big companies. Sorry, Stefan, on Bosch, but I mean, that's a fantastic company. But the fact is that we know that everyone needs to transform. We're not talking about incremental change anymore. And I think this is something one should never underestimate, the importance of startups, of being, this kind of, it's like flies and, it's just this continuous buzz that is going on, which I think can help us also in accelerating the path towards a sustainable future.
Hold that thought. I just look into the crowd here to check if there's any question already, because there's one thing that keeps happening. I'm having such a good time up here that I look at all of you too late. So if there is a question, then I would need a hand up in the air and we would bring you a microphone. Or maybe some of you would like to comment something. And there is a lady. Do we have a microphone for the lady in red?
Hi, my name is Dash, and I wanted to ask you something about collaboration between startups and corporates. I really liked how Mr. Hartung was mentioning about corporates as customers, and specifically for impact solutions, that the innovative impact solutions. How can one find this connection points basically to corporates that will be with sustainability element in it, not just only innovation? That's my question.
Thank you. That is for you, Mr. Hart.
It's both ways, and you may add to this because I think you also do this, right? I mean, there's normally then opening up like RFQs. We had one last year where we said, okay, give us something new, crazy about AI application in certain areas of business, right? And whoever wants to come and show something is welcome to show. And it's kind of like a contest. So multiple teams engage on this subject. Then our teams are there to directly engage with the startup and look into it, right? Look at the science they have, the differentiation, innovation. Then they try to apply it in their area, and then they present the case, and then it's we give out even the price, and normally then also there starts a collaboration after that, because that happens. But it can be, there are normally so many different startups around. You have to offer something which is intriguing and say, this kind of application, do you have something for this? And then there will be people. This is very interesting. Normally you don't know these, and you have to spread it. So that's one of these things. The other one is obviously, which I mentioned, is this this tedious work you have to do, and nice that you said it also, if you want to invest and want to find startups to invest in, then you need a real professional team. You need a fund, you need to open up an investment scheme. Then and by the way, we have then people who really are taking share in that investment, because we have learned if you do this kind of administratively, right? So you have kind of functional officers doing the investment. That's not good enough, because it's super high risk investment. Always. It's a startup. It can dysfunction any second, right? And implode to nothing. So if you go in with 5 million, these 5 million could be lost. You shouldn't lose 5 million in a large company just right away, right? That's not very welcomed all the time. But in this area it is. So the risk mitigation we take, we have certain people which are investment active people. They actually take a small share. Their salary is based on their personal stake. And that is then a really complex matter, because then you go in and analyze startups which are on the market. So you have to listen to hundreds of pitches. You have to be in the deal flow, global. So what's going on in Israel? What's going on in California, right? What's going on in Boston? What's going on in Germany? And this is the other way you go to this kind of collaboration. So either this open platform kind of stuff, or the real investment screening.
Oh, you could also spread the risk, of course, by
you
not going in full with the 5 million, but you have partners.
You always do. I mean, very often, rarely we go direct into one startup and give them a seed investor as a core investor. Very often we go in and take a share in an investment group, so in a round that we say, and you have to see, at the beginning it may be just 1, 2, 3 million, right? But then it goes to quickly to 20, 30 million. Then we may be still around, but I had a talk with a startup lately here last week. I mean, they were in the third round, they do chip designs. I mean, they got in their round now $640 million. And that's the point when suddenly Germany is out. Because there's hardly anybody I know who just says, okay, I just take 100 of the 640. Because guess what? Of the 640, again, 640 million are at risk. Yeah, full, right? And you have to be big enough to be 640 million risk player. I'm not really.
That financing in startups, it's quite tough. You can only be on seed stage, and buying this innovation as a customer, the first option that you have mentioned, is a bit easier for you as a corporate. Do I understand it correct?
No, I like it very much, this collaborating with the innovation, because that gives you first much more insight. And second of all, it also is a huge benefit for the startup. Yeah, and you can also follow it up through the scaling. And you have to treat it then as a real separate company. If you on the way then recognize, oh, this is such a thing, I want to own it, you still have the option to talk about buying the entire thing. But that's something you don't do always, right? I like very much to collaborate with lots of startups, because that's very innovative work. good for the company.
Dr. Thanh?
Well, I'd like to add something because we always talk about startup, but it's not just startup. There are deep tech startup and there's startups, and I think I would like to pick up what Professor Rockström said. Like we are quite aware that we need to pace higher, right? To innovate. And if you want to look for that, you have to go into the deep tech. Yes. You have to look for disruptive technology. And I think that is one of the, let's say, difficult side in Germany. And I would like to share just like our journey lately, the past couple of months, so you get an idea what it's like to work in a startup that is deep tech. So, as I mentioned, we're about to raise the Series A. So we had a nice seed funding, and now we'd like to continue to build up our pilot plant and prove that we are scalable. And what we did was, of course, we talked to a lot of investors, sure, but we also reached out to publicly funded organizations. And I would like to mention two to explain you why I think there's a lot of homework we have to do in Germany. The first one, let's say it's Sprint. I think most of you know them. I'm a big fan of Sprint. I think it's a great idea. Sprint is, for those who don't know it, Sprint is the German deep tech agency. They want to back up like really bold and disruptive and transformative technologies startups, right? And the thing is that we've been talking with them and it's going well, very well, but right now they do actually have a problem. And the problem is you might say, well, why do we have something like this in Germany? The thing is, Sprint right now is kind of stuck. Why? Because the budget of 2025, that is the Staatshaushalt 2025, is not approved yet. So, new projects that should move fast are kind of like retarded right now, on hold. And now to continue, if you take Sprint and they're fully operational, let's say we approved the Haushalt 2025, so they operate, I hope I'm not lying, roughly 190 million of budget annually. So this might sound big, but if you look at DARPA, which is the US version of Sprint, their annual budget is roughly 4 billion. I think 2025 it's 4.3 billion. And they focus on investing or funding very high risk startups. And to compare that with German, well, I think I don't need to mention that. The thing is, if you also look at,
we have some catching up to do there.
Yeah, if you look at DARPA, for example, you will see they have roughly, I think, 10% of success rate. So a lot of projects fail, but the ones that do succeed, they change the world. I mean, if you look at DARPA, no DARPA, there would be no internet. No DARPA, there would be no GPS or AI breakthroughs for ChatGPT. And companies like let's say, SpaceX or how you call it, Moderna, right?
Moderna, yeah.
They wouldn't have survived the valley of death if it wasn't for the contracts of DARPA and the funding of DARPA. So I think what we really need to understand is there is risk. Deep tech is by definition risk. It's not, it's because like deep tech is about solving the most complex, the hardest problem, so to unlock biggest potential, biggest opportunities, right?
You're describing a deep chasm between the potential that we have here, that we can all agree, and Professor Rockström mentioned it as well, great research, great ideas, and then the scalability of it because of lack of funding, because that's suddenly where a different kind of risk attitude is taking place. It's a cultural thing, I would say.
Exactly, it's a cultural thing, it's a mindset. And if you look at the way like we Germans approach these investments, it's more about avoiding failure. And
Dr. Orlopp, are we avoiding? Is Commerzbank, well, you mentioned earlier, obviously, I mean, you know, you can't just
we
say,
have,
I
we
find
have
that
our
company.
fair share of failures in our investments as well. So it's, I mean, it's, and when you do investments such early stage, you need to be aware of the fact that there's sometimes a unicorn in it, and then you are celebrating that. But unfortunately, there are also a number of investments
failures,
which do not work out. I think we have had also some tough years the last 3, 4, 5 years. I started that 10 years ago when I joined the bank. I was a head of strategy when I joined, and I basically introduced with the support of the CEO by that time, Commerzventure, and did the first fund. This first fund is still great. But it was a different time, different price levels, different investments, and a lot of money came in the system. A lot of things got financed, and now we are a little bit stuck. And that is also part of the story. One part is the funding part, but then you need to also have a market where you can basically displace the thing. You need to have a functioning capital market that at a certain point in time you can also IPO things and find again investors for it. That's a problem which we have actually across the world. That is not a German problem. It's a problem which we currently have with all these early stage things that one thing is to invest, the other thing is to also show a success and have a liquid market, to say it like that. Coming back to the original question, when you have an impact solution, I mean, if you have something for the large companies, you can always go directly to the large companies. If you have something which is fitting also for medium-sized companies, you definitely should use banks. Use us, for example, with the Impact Festival, which is once a year, which is basically a marketplace where we put together Mittelstand clients on the one side, many of them, and on the other side, we provide the platforms for startups who are basically in the impact area, who can present during 3 days their solutions, their ideas to clients, and that is one way of bringing that together. And I know that we have not only the only format, there are more than these formats, but that is, if you're looking for customers, that is one of the best formats. If you're looking for investments, indeed, it's a different venture funds, etc. you need to look for. I also made the experience, we have 2 funds. One is very much connected to our clients, where we really think more about client solutions. I have to say they are financially not so successful, which is good because it's more meant to be there for the clients. The other one we have set completely outside of the bank, because if we would look at that always with a banker risk view, lots of things would not happen. So it's really this is a team which acts completely independent. I'm part of the investment committee, so I can say no to it if I don't like it. But they just lead it, and they co-invest, etc. It's a complete different thing, and it needs to be outside of traditional corporates, of a traditional bank. Otherwise, it would not work.
Right. I have to tell you something. I don't know if you know, but this afternoon, the students of the European School of Management and Technology, and I haven't forgotten you, there was a gentleman who wanted to say something. I would like just to take this first, and please don't forget what you want to say. I will come back to you, promised. But those students were working on 3 different case studies, all related to our topic. And one of the students is brave enough to come to the stage and share with us what her group was working on, namely Isabelle Martin. Give her a rousing round of applause, please. Isabelle.
Yes.
You can... Before we talk, maybe yes, actually, why not? Sit straight away. Let's change the rules. Yeah, change. We have to be flexible. Do share with us. There were 3 case studies, one on innovating for a sustainable AI future, one for financing sustainable startups, and the third one, policy advocacy through cross-sector collaboration. I think you were working on the third?
Worked, yeah, on the third.
On the third.
Yes.
Okay, tell us how that went.
So it was an amazing opportunity to work in these cases and to see also like the comments and ideas that came up from the other cases of the other students. I worked together with other groups of other students, colleagues of mine, on the third case in particular, and we watched how actually governments and regulation affect the life of a startup. You must know it for sure. And how these regulation actually make like the life of a startup kind of difficult and slow the whole process. I know it also by myself because I'm also involved in a deep tech startup. So I know how all the processes and regulations actually slow the whole process. And what we came up with was that the most common problem is that startups need an ecosystem, and of course governments can help, but they're not the only problem inside this kind of system. And if we created an ecosystem between universities, research centers, and other institutions, also like accelerators, like the Vali Berlin inside our university, we could actually foster innovation and actually help startups, deep tech ideas to set their ideas and ground them so that we can actually create an innovation for tomorrow and start actually to bring change and to find some fundings and make these things possible.
It sounds perfect. Sounds perfect, but these kind of ecosystems, yeah, you like that? The kind of ecosystem that Isabelle described, that they were working on, I mean, they don't exist yet. It sort of seems so obvious. And if they don't exist to that extent, why not? What's standing in the way? And I'm looking at all of you.
It starts with small things, right? For example, tax. I mean, you have to form a company, right? So you have to go there and apply for a company and give a license and all that. And then startups don't make profit in the first year. Some don't make profit after 10 years, right? Tesla made profit after how many years? It was. Now, tax people from the authorities don't like companies that say they are companies, but they never make profits, right? And then the big question first comes, is that a company? Maybe it's just a hobby. Yeah, and that's, for example, very bad if it's a hobby. Yeah, so and these kind of are standard regulations. They're not made for startups. You're treated like Bosch, right? So there comes a tax guy, checks on you, what you're doing, right? And then I'm completely shocked that you just have 5 people and do something very complicated nobody understands, and you tell that you're saving the world. Why should that be believable? So, and it goes on like that forever, right? With the ecological regulations, so environmental protection regulations, right? Things like that sound for us very suitable. We all talked about it, that is great, actually, do the ESG thing. But for a startup, that can be hazardous. That can stop their entire show. And they just have to go. It could be that the activity field they're working is actually forbidden. Right, genome research stuff, right? No, you can't do that. So get out of the country quickly. So and it goes on and on like this. So you need an ecosystem and support. Otherwise, it's high risk that you have most of your people working with the government, and not with the subject.
Yeah, Professor Rockström.
Yeah. So let me take a teeny weeny contrarian view on this, which is that. You know, I hear the word compliance all the time, and I fully recognize that we are in a jungle of legal, but also voluntary report schemes, everything from the Science-Based Target Initiative to the EU ESG requirements to all the CDPs and ISSBs and TNFDs and TCFDs. Of course, that is a reality. But there is a big but there, which I think startup community particularly should turn this around and see what's happening in the world on the regulatory framework as a form of insider information of the pathway we're heading towards, and turn compliance requirements into the opportunity. Because we know historically that as soon as you put a constraint, a hard constraint, that is the mother of all innovation. Ultimately, that is what drives efficiency. And startups are all about being one step ahead on the innovation curve. So if you're a smart startup, in my mind, you take the compliance requirements and make them to your guidance for innovation. And is that smart or not at this time step? Well, I would say strongly that it is smart, because we know that the trajectory is that it will only get tighter and tighter and tighter, because the space just shrinks for us to have any chance. And it doesn't matter if you care or don't care about the planet or climate. If you just look at rare earth metals, if you just look at soils, if you just look at biomass, all the innovation when it comes to food or built environment or any kind of infrastructure will in the end have to, cope within finite, narrow budgets of resources. And that's where I think the startup innovation pathway will for sure potentially be faster than many of the large companies. So make compliance the best thing. Wake up in the morning and say, yes, I love these regulations.
Oh, yeah, politicians love that. Wonderful.
But let me maybe after this, I think I can agree. I couldn't agree more. I think regulation as an innovation driver would be great. But I have to admit, absolutely, that we are not there yet. So,
no, for sure. But remember, can you imagine who remembers in this room even that the European Union has taken a legal decision that from 2035 there will be no more internal combustion engine cars sold in the European Union. Yeah. How many even remember that? That's 10 years from now. Yeah. Come on, it's a huge transformation. Yeah. This is just around the corner. Of course, it's stressing up the automotive industry. Yeah. But
some politicians.
We talked with the
these are hard regulatory requirements, but they drive innovation.
Yeah, but I have to say that
let me add two points. Well, the first is, of course, regulation should be easy and understandable and reliable. That's not where we are.
Make sense sometimes
absolutely. And you have to make differences between startups and Bosches in the world. That's what we do as regulators, I would say. Maybe not good enough, but that's what we do. It's simply not true that all the rules for Lieferketten-Sorgfaltsgesetz do apply for Bosch and for TAN the same way. This should be said. But on the other hand, I think everyone in Europe knows that we have to have smarter regulation. That's why Ursula von der Leyen now proposes to get rid of some of the false regulation that we during the last 3 years in government, we started a lot of processes making it easier for the companies to apply to the rule. For example, 5 years ago, it took companies 7 years to build up a windmill. And obviously, we had to accelerate the energy turnaround, the Energiewende in Germany, after we discovered that the Russian gas is not the best idea we ever had. So now it's more or less possible to have these windmills in 7 to 15 months. So there is a way to accelerate bureaucratic processes. But I would absolutely say that, especially in Europe, regulation is part of the innovation game. When it comes to chemicals, for example, when it comes to the goal that we share, that we want to get rid of the carbon-based economy. I know a startup that is doing very well from Mannheim. They help companies to implement the Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz using AI.
Yeah.
We have to have more transparency throughout the production processes that companies have, and it's necessary to digitalize all the processes. So there is a lot of space, opportunities for startups to go inside and, for example, digitalize at a very high level of data security, which is not the case, for example, in China or in the US. So there could be a special European, unique selling
USP,
point, you can say,
yeah.
USP, absolutely. Yeah. So that's the point of view that I would love to share with you on regulation.
Mm. Okay, I've seen loads of
something?
hands in the air, and I have to keep a promise. Maybe the next question is for you, then you can tie that in, or you make it very, very short.
Yeah, but let me just, because I mean, everybody is for regulation, because regulation sometimes makes things safer and it's important. No question about that. I think nobody is questioning it. But making the point, if you ask anybody in the US stating that regulation is a driver for innovation, they would just laugh loudly about us.
Now less than ever.
That is something which I think is not, well, you know, take the AI thing. Take the AI thing. US announces 500 billion euros to be invested in AI. We have an AI Act. So I think
collected all the.
But this is also part.
I think we need to
This is also part of
have-
sustainability, because not everything that is let loose on society, uncontrolled, is necessarily a sustainable idea. I'm not part of the panel. I shouldn't even say that. Which is why I'm turning to the. I know this is now really sort of, but unfortunately we have only limited time. There was one gentleman, and he is the first. The gentleman there in the middle. If he can have a microphone fairly soon, here in the second, third row, please come. No, please come here. He was the first to hold up his hand. I sort of try to keep an eye so please, the gentleman there.
But just while he's waiting for the mic, I don't disagree with you, Bettina, but look here, California has tougher regulations than Europe.
Yeah.
We have massive regulations in the US on the American Clean Air Act, for example. It's not that they're totally kind of alien to
different
regulation.
government now. We don't know where that's headed.
That's a different thing. That's a different thing what's happening right now. But the US was actually behind the Montreal Protocol. This is the country that established the first environmental protection agency to drive large parts of their economic investments. So it's not as if it's never been regulations in the US.
No.
Yeah. Which is why Musk is supposed to also deregulate left, right, and center. Okay. The gentleman, please.
Thank you. So my name is Masa Sabuni. Actually, I built a startup 1 year ago almost, okay? And I have one point, actually. I don't have a fix for this, but I would like to highlight this point about our ecosystem with the startup. Our ecosystem startup is great if you have the right connection, but the ecosystem doesn't treat everyone equally. That means if you don't have connection, you get lost. I went to the bank, they asked for security. I went to Bosch, they said, who's using your product? That means you have always doorkeeper, and those doorkeeper, they don't understand your idea first, and they cannot verify or qualify your idea, and they will just close the door, and you get lost. But if you have the right connection, then you get up. And this is actually, let's say, not healthy for such kind of ecosystem. It is not blaming or complaining, it's about how to fix this. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The gentleman there, right next to you, who just raised his hand there. Yep.
Yes. Can you? Yeah. I feel a little bit like an alien now because I'm an artist and I miss the arts, the contribution of the arts. I'm working since 30 years with companies because the transformation starts up here. And I hear all these difficulties in politics and regulation, and So we have to find a solution. We have to become flexible to navigate through all these difficulties. I don't see another solution. So engage artists. They will.
Yeah, true.
They will make nice chaos, because out of chaos you will think differently afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that contribution. There's a gentleman at the further at the hand is up in the air. Up. I think it's a gentleman, yes.
Hello, yes, it's a gentleman. First of all, I want to bring it back. I love the arts as well, but to bring it back to legislation, actually, because it's also, since from the questionnaire, it's the most important topic. I think it's vital, and I want to bring this topic to a more tangible aspect, which is, probably you heard about it, the EU Verpackungsverordnung, or packaging and packaging waste. This is a new regulation that I think is stopping innovation, and if you equal startups to innovation, and the discussion or the main question of it all is legislation stopping innovation? And I think with the new EU Verpackungsverordnung, it is. I want to hear your opinion about it, but it basically says that if packaging is not recyclable from the year 2030 on, you're not allowed to introduce it into the market. Now my question to you is, what is a better circular economy? Does it just involve plastic, and we are spinning our world around plastic, producing plastic out of plastic and so on? Or does a golden standard of circular economy start with nature, sourcing from nature, and then actually biodegrading and bringing that material back into nature? Isn't that a way better circular economy than spinning around plastic?
Can I ask you for a favor? Could you pick one person up on stage to definitely answer that?
Yes. Member of the parliament, please.
Well, I think this fits perfectly to the point that we just discussed. I mean, in the best of all worlds, regulation would be would support innovation, and would kind of set goals that are very strong. For example, have a climate neutral economy till, let's say, 2050, till what Europe has done. And then let companies and startups and all the clever guys and girls find ideas to make sure that it happens. That would be, from my point of view, the best possible world. In democracy, you have to find majorities for these kind of instruments to become concrete. And of course, within these political processes, you have a lot of discussion. We talked about combustion engines. We talked about, you're absolutely right. The question, how should circular economy look like, is a question that we cannot answer it right now. Because obviously some people tell me from the plastic industries, we will need plastic. For example, when it comes to surgeries, when it comes to all the medical stuff, you need plastic to really make sure that there are no bacteria and stuff in it. So maybe you should find ways, and we have ways to recycle plastic. But where we can substitute plastic, maybe it's a good idea to do it. It also, maybe it's up in the price of the products. And the price obviously sinks when products become more like become accessible to a broader market. So there are different points of views that you must be taken into account. And I think, well, maybe especially in Europe, there is more room for being more technology open. And I say that as a green. Maybe some people think that's unusual, but I think we have to have some some way for trial and error, especially when it comes to circular economy and climate neutral future. And again, startups are very important to make sure that the way is really, that we try a lot of different things on the way. That's
because they can think out of the box, which
absolutely
comes natural to them. Professor Rockström, you wanted to say?
Yeah, just very short. That I mean, I think there is a definitely, and I think it comes across in this panel as well, a balance between the value of regulations that can drive innovation and then going too far and becoming so detailed that it really just hampers and pulls down and just creates bureaucracy. And of course, the European Union packaging legislation on reuse and recycling is really, I agree, kind of tilting towards the more administratively burdening. But the fundamentals stand, I would argue, that we cannot go on with the linear destroying processes we have. Yet last year, the big UN plastic treaty effort failed, as you know, and it failed because the fossil fuel-based plastic industry refused to reduce supply of plastic into society. They said, we will only accept to work on reuse and recycling, but we will never accept to reduce the supply, while the legislation tried to say we need to draw down supply. And I think that is where the innovation comes in, that if you draw down supply and say we're reducing fossil fuel-based packaging, the innovations for biodegradable packaging is not limited in the European legislation. It's actually adapted for the fossil fuel industry to be able to recycle and reuse. So I think again, it's a question of embracing the more science-aligned regulations, which today, when it comes to packaging, it upstream of the EU legislation to reduce supply. That can drive innovation rather than this business of downstream reuse and recycling.
Right. I have 5 minutes left, and I'm sorry I can't take more because we won't have time to answer them. And we do have online viewers as well, and they also asked questions. And Mr. Hartung hasn't said anything for a while, and there is a question that says, hello, Mr. Hartung, in the beginning you said that money is often not the problem of startups. How do you come to this assumption?
Because on the first seeding phase, that's not really the most prominent issue if the idea is good. Yeah, if there's a good idea and a good deep tech idea, a good problem addressed, right? So you have described what you want to solve, and it's important enough, right? Then the first money to get to work on it with 10, 15 people or so for a couple of years, that's normally not the issue. There's more the issues about, you have to employ 15 people, so all the employment regulation works here. You have a workspace, you have all regulation on labs and all that kind of stuff. That's sometimes tedious, you don't like that. But on this stage, there's the money, not the issue. It comes a bit later, then money becomes a big issue. Yeah, because exactly when we talk about a pilot plant, right, about a bigger operation. By the way, once you do a bigger operation, then all kinds of new regulation kicks in, and wants to hear from you, what kind of operation do you have here? Do you have any emissions and this and that? That's normal, right? That's the way it is. The problematic part is rather how can we make it as easy as possible so that not everybody gets quick seed money and can do the first steps, but also have a regulatory environment where maybe you can move it around in Europe, because sometimes you want to move it from Germany to France to Belgium to whatever. And right now you can't do that because the regulatory environment is different. So that's, by the way, what Ursula von der Leyen wants to do with her new commission, that there is a kind of standardized regulation environment for startups that they can move and float around entire Europe. But it's a good idea. It's, let's say, Government 28, she says it, she calls it, right? And I thought to myself, I said, okay, I would like to have it also as Bosch, because then you get rid of all these tiny 27 markets. You want to have one market. By the way, that was the idea of the EU at the beginning. So maybe we come back to that idea quickly. But the second and late stage financing, where we go to real scaling, global scaling, right? Then things become different, because then our market, our capital market, is sometimes not big enough to take that much risk money. Because you have to think about, if we talk about one startup, 500 million, and let's say it's 100 of those, And that's total risk money, so absolute failure possible. So it could be zero. You need to have a pot of money in the background, which minimum is 20 times as big for that one investment, right? And then we talk about real big money, which is in the bond market of the European side not available, right? So it's certain, there's limits. If you need 5 billion in the European Union, you can still get it. If you need 50 billion, I don't think you can get it in the European bond market, right? You need to go to the US. And so that means risk money, if you need 1 or 2 billion, you're already at the risk that you have to go to the US. Yeah, and that's a problematic factor because that limits certain things in the EU. So their money becomes so very quickly, and that's so sad actually, that in very many cases we have all these seed startups on deep tech, and then suddenly you read, right, oh, this fusion startup suddenly is in Colorado, and you say, whoa, why is that happening, right? They were Europeans. Actually, the designers are in Munich. Why is the pilot plant in the US? Because it's easier to finance there, and the regulation is better there, and they are nearer to a university, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah, that's what it is. And by the way, universities are completely different animals in the US. Universities have capital. No German university has any capital, right? Yeah, so, yeah, you do. You are a very unique university, right? Yeah, very
Your
unique.
email account will be flooded now.
I was talking about something like Harvard with 50 billion, or MIT with 20 billion, or Cornell with 10 billion. So we were talking serious capital. So those kind of people can say, I put 100 million into this subject. Ask me anything about a German university being able to do, I put 100 million into this subject. Forget it. It's not going to happen, right?
So how can we make Germany as a wonderful startup hub, also Europe? How can we make that sound good again? Because right now we have great ideas. Seed money is there. There's a certain ecosystem there. There are some things that could be better. Unfortunately, we can't get all the solutions now, but we can get our mobile phones out again for that question that we had at the very beginning to find out if anything changed. And let's just remind ourselves, so this was what you said before this discussion. And the main problem, the main hurdle was supportive legislation and policies, i.e. that is the most important in order to foster a sustainable startup ecosystem. Let's find out what you say now. The question is the same. The answers that you can choose from are the same. No, not those questions. I would like to have the polling questions. Thank you very much. The others would be great if we had another hour time, which unfortunately we don't have. So,
it's only 2 votes.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a battle going on.
Between A and B, yeah.
Access to public and private funding, which is not surprising. That was pretty much what we talked about a lot, and certainly the last answer. So we manipulated you slightly there. But the supportive legislation and policies is still runners-up, so definitely a very important topic, and the development of eco-friendly jobs and skills is still an afterthought. I'm sorry, Professor Rockström. But that's the result. And because, Isabelle, which one would you have gone for?
I would have chosen like the audience or the first one.
You would have gone for the first one?
Yes, I got also influenced by the whole panel discussion.
Yeah.
And that's what also like it emerged by our discussion before.
Okay, so that was part of your in the case study as well.
Yes.
Okay. Well then, I wanted to have a really nice, neat round of final words, but I know we're heading very, very straight towards 8 o'clock. If you all can manage to say in one sentence for you the key takeaway of this discussion, we may do it. Can you do it in one sentence?
I think still startups are an essence for a modern economy, so we should continue to strive for it. And we should be jealous about the former startups like Google, Meta, and so on.
Okay, Tan.
So since I'm representing the startup, can I say wish, like what I would like? Well, maybe we should not so much ask what if it fails, but ask like what if it works?
Exactly.
Dr. Detzer.
Thank you to all the brave people like Tan, all that are sitting in this room, that you really do struggle so hard to set up startups, to really try something new. This is what this country, what Europe needs. We are in huge geopolitical disruptions, and I think to bring together the startups, the innovation, the sustainability, and the social impact, as we discussed it today, it's a huge factor for competitiveness in Europe. So thank you, and please continue.
Thank you. Dr. Orlopp, one sentence.
I think growth is only possible via innovation, and for innovation we need startups. Therefore, we need to finance them. I think the WIN initiative, which we have started with the old government, was a great starting point, and hopefully the new government, whoever it will be after the February 23, will also continue that.
Professor Rockström.
You think I'll say embrace regulation, but I won't. Well, we know statistics. I mean, 20% of employment in OECD is startups. And we know since 1962 that Roger Everett showed in the theory of diffusion of innovation that once you come above 20% in any market, you can really go on an S-curve of innovation and tip over the logic in inert, slow-moving markets. So we need more startups to drive that transformation.
Famous last words. Thank you very much for being here. Apologies that I couldn't have more questions in, but I got more than the last time. I do know that. So thank you very much for being here. Also, thank you everyone joining us online.